So, my manager told me I was being groomed for a senior position and asked me to train a new hire to take over my current responsibilities. I spent 4 months mentoring this person, sharing every skill I developed over 6 years, only to discover in a company-wide email that she was actually being promoted to the position I was promised. And the worst part? HR knew the entire time and helped orchestrate the whole thing. Am I the asshole for what I did next? Before I dive into this absolute nightmare of a story, I really need you guys to hear me out on this one, because I'm still processing what happened. If you're enjoying these workplace drama stories, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling me if you think I handled this situation wrong, because honestly, I'm still not sure. Let me take you back to where this all started, because context really matters here. I've been working at a mid-sized marketing agency for 6 years now. I started as a junior content strategist right out of my master's program, hungry to prove myself in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. Over the years, I climbed my way up through sheer determination, countless late nights, and sacrificing more weekends than I can count. By year 4, I had become the lead content strategist, managing a team of 3 and handling some of our biggest client accounts. My manager, let's call her Victoria, had been with the company for about 8 years when I joined. She was the director of content strategy, and from the very beginning, she positioned herself as my mentor. She would take me to client lunches, include me in executive meetings, and constantly tell me that she saw herself in me. She'd say things like, "Rachel, you remind me so much of where I was at your age. I'm going to make sure you don't have to struggle the way I did." I believed her. God, I really believed her. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect. Victoria would advocate for my raises, recommend me for high-profile projects, and publicly praise my work in team meetings. I genuinely thought I had found not just a great boss, but a career-long mentor. I was so naive. About 18 months ago, Victoria called me into her office and closed the door behind us. She had this excited energy about her that I'd never seen before. She sat me down and told me that the company was creating a new position, Senior Director of Integrated Content. It would be a step above her current role, essentially making whoever got it her equal on the organizational chart, but with a focus on emerging platforms and AI-driven content strategies. She told me with absolute conviction in her voice that she was recommending me for this position. "Rachel, you've earned this," she said, reaching across her desk to squeeze my hand. "I've already spoken to the VP and he agrees that you're the perfect candidate. But here's the thing, we need you to prove you can delegate. Right now, you're too hands-on with your accounts. We need to see that you can train someone to take over your current responsibilities while you focus on the bigger picture." I was elated. After 6 years of grinding, of saying yes to every project, of being the first one in and the last one out, my hard work was finally paying off. I went home that night and cried happy tears to my husband, Marcus. We opened a bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. I even started mentally budgeting for the salary increase Victoria had hinted at. Maybe we could finally start thinking about buying a house instead of renting. 2 weeks later, Victoria introduced me to Megan. She was 26, fresh from a competitor agency, and Victoria explained that she would be my mentee. My job was to train Megan on all my current accounts, teach her my processes, and help her understand the client relationships I'd built over the years. Victoria framed it as the final test for my promotion. "Think of this as your leadership audition," Victoria told me, with that warm smile I'd come to trust. "Show us you can develop talent, and that senior director position is yours by Q2. So I threw myself into training Megan. I created detailed documentation for every single process I developed. I invited her to every client call, introducing her as my protege and vouching for her capabilities. I shared contact lists, strategy templates, even the little personal details about clients that help you build rapport, like how our biggest client's CEO loved talking about his rescue greyhounds, or how another client's marketing manager was going through a divorce and appreciated when we kept meetings efficient so she could leave early for custody exchanges. Megan was eager and capable. I'll give her that. She picked things up quickly and asked thoughtful questions. I actually enjoyed mentoring her, which made what happened next so much worse. Over those 4 months, I noticed small things that seemed off, but I explained them away. Victoria started including Megan in meetings I wasn't invited to. When I asked about it, Victoria said they were just onboarding sessions to help Megan understand company culture. Megan would sometimes know about client updates before I did, which Victoria attributed to the clients just reaching out to her directly since they know she's taking over your current role. Then there were the whispered conversations that would stop when I walked into the room, the way certain colleagues started looking at me with something that resembled pity. One of my teammates, Derek, pulled me aside one day and said, "Hey, just, watch your back, okay?" When I pressed him for details, he just shook his head and walked away. I should have pushed harder. I should have trusted my instincts. Instead, I convinced myself that I was being paranoid, that the stress of preparing for a major promotion was making me see shadows where there were none. Exactly 4 months after Megan started, I walked into the office on a Tuesday morning and the energy was different. People were gathered in small clusters, talking in hushed tones. When they saw me, they dispersed. I checked my email and there it was, a company-wide announcement. Our CEO was thrilled to announce that Megan Chen had been promoted to Senior Director of Integrated Content, effective immediately. The email praised her exceptional strategic vision and natural leadership abilities. It mentioned that she would be overseeing the digital transformation initiatives that I had been spearheading for the past year. I read that email 3 times before the words actually registered. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to put my phone down on my desk. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. For a moment, I genuinely thought I might throw up. I walked straight to Victoria's office. She wasn't there. I walked to HR. The director, a man named Theodore, who always wore bow ties and spoke in corporate buzzwords, was in his office. I didn't even knock. I just walked in and closed the door behind me. What is going on? I asked, my voice barely controlled. I was told I was being groomed for that position. I spent 4 months training Megan specifically so that I could move into that role. Theodore had this look on his face that I will never forget. It was a mixture of discomfort and something else, something that looked almost like guilt. He adjusted his bow tie and said, Rachel, I understand this might be confusing, but the decision was made based on what's best for the company's future direction. Megan's experience with AI platforms and her fresh perspective made her the strongest candidate. Fresh perspective? I could feel my voice rising. I taught her everything she knows about our clients. I literally gave her my playbooks. Victoria told me I was being considered for this position. She told me training Megan was part of my evaluation. Theodore's face went pale. He started shuffling papers on his desk, avoiding my eyes. I'm not sure what conversations you had with Victoria, but the position was always going to be filled through a competitive process. If there was any miscommunication about that, I apologize, but the decision has been made. I felt something shift inside me at that moment. The grief and confusion started hardening into something else, determination. I went back to my desk and started going through my emails, my calendar invites, everything. And that's when I found it. A calendar invite from 3 months ago that I'd apparently been removed from that still showed up in my deleted items. It was a meeting titled Succession Planning Content Strategy Department. The attendees were Victoria, Theodore, our VP, and Megan. 3 months ago, before Megan had even finished her 2nd month under my guidance. I started digging deeper. I found email threads where I'd been removed but where the conversation history was still visible. In one of them, Victoria wrote to Theodore, Megan is progressing excellently. Rachel has been incredibly thorough in her training. This transition should be seamless. Per our discussion, we should wait until Megan has full ownership of the client relationships before making the announcement. Theodore's response, agreed. The less time Rachel has to react, the better. We don't want to risk her sabotaging the transition. I sat there, staring at my screen, reading those words over and over. They had planned this from the beginning. Victoria had never intended to promote me. She used my trust, my work ethic, and my genuine desire to mentor someone to groom my own replacement. And HR was complicit the entire time. I spent the next week gathering documentation. Every email, every meeting note, every instance where Victoria had discussed my promotion in writing. I found a Slack message from Victoria to another director that read, Rachel's doing exactly what we need. She's so eager to prove herself for this promotion that she's basically creating a turnkey operation for Megan. Once Megan's up to speed, we won't need Rachel in a leadership capacity anymore. I also discovered that Megan had been hired specifically for this role. Her offer letter, which she had accidentally forwarded to me instead of her personal email early in her tenure, referenced the senior director position as her target role within 6 months of hire. She knew. She had known from day one that she was there to take my job, and she let me mentor her anyway. Let me share my hard-won knowledge. Let me treat her like a protege when I was actually just her stepping stone. Armed with all of this documentation, I requested a meeting with our CEO. I went above Victoria, above Theodore, above everyone who had been part of this conspiracy. I presented everything. The emails, the calendar invites, the Slack messages, Megan's offer letter, and Victoria's broken promises. The CEO, a man named Richard, who had always seemed to respect my work, listened to everything. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Rachel, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. However, I need you to understand that management decisions about positioning and promotions are at the discretion of department leadership. While the communication could have been handled better, there's nothing here that suggests any policy violations. Nothing? I could feel my voice rising. They deliberately deceived me. They used me to train someone for a position they told me I was getting. HR was involved in planning this. Isn't that some kind of violation? Isn't there supposed to be integrity in how promotions are handled? Richard sighed. I understand you're upset, but Megan is qualified for the role and the decision has been made. If you'd like, I can have HR discuss your future growth opportunities at the company. Something in me broke at that moment, but it wasn't the kind of breaking that destroys you. It was the kind that frees you. I realized that this company, this place I had given 6 years of my life to, had no loyalty to me. So I made a decision. I said nothing else to Richard. I went back to my desk and started making calls. Over the next 3 weeks, I reached out to every client contact I had built relationships over 6 years. I had lunch meetings, coffee chats, and after-work drinks. I told them I was leaving the company to start my own consulting practice. I never badmouthed the company, never revealed what had happened to me. I simply let my reputation and my relationships speak for themselves. By the time I submitted my resignation, I had verbal commitments from 4 major clients, representing about 40% of the department's revenue. They weren't following me because I had asked them to. They were following me because I was the one who had built their strategies, understood their needs, and delivered results for years. Megan had the playbooks, but she didn't have the relationships. On my last day, Victoria pulled me into her office. She had the audacity to look hurt. Rachel, I don't understand why you're leaving. There are still so many opportunities for you here. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, Rachel, I learned everything I needed to learn from you, just not what you intended to teach me. I walked out without another word. The fallout was significant. Within 3 months, the clients who had left with me were publicly attributed to my departure. Richard called me personally, asking if there was anything that would convince me to return. I declined. Megan, I heard from former colleagues, was struggling. She had the processes, but not the instincts, and the clients who remained were unhappy with the sudden change in quality and attention. But here's why I'm asking if I'm the asshole. Some people have told me that what I did was unethical, that taking clients was a form of corporate sabotage, that I should have just left quietly and started fresh instead of decimating the department that had wronged me. My own mother said I should have been the bigger person, that revenge never brings peace. But I don't see it as revenge. I see it as consequence. They exploited my trust and my labor to benefit someone else. Why should the relationships I built belong to me? Why should I protect a company that conspired against me? So Reddit, am I the asshole for exposing the whole scheme and taking my clients with me when I left? Wow, that was a lot to unpack, and I really appreciate you sticking with me through the entire story. I genuinely want to know what you think, so please drop your verdict in the comments.